So I don't think I've talked about Collin Sexton really at all this year, so we're going to do that now. The one thing with Collin that you have to appreciate is the shooting, because if I remember correctly, there were questions about his shot, according to people who are smarter than me when it comes to prospects and the draft and all that. And he's been making his threes at a pretty impressive clip this year for a guy who we were like, well, is this guy going to be able to make them or not? I mean, 41% from three is pretty damn good. Now, 3 attempts a game is nothing to go crazy about, but it is still a good sign. But what is maybe a little more intriguing is as the season has gone along, Sexton has gotten a lot more confident with his three. The last couple of games, he's been taking contested threes that have been going in. I mean, he had a run recently of 4 games in a row, or you could stretch it out to 6 games in a row, where he attempted at least 5 3-pointers. And he's been kind of on this trajectory for the last, I don't know, 20-something games or so. And that's all good stuff. And the percentages have held up for the most part, whether it's off the dribble or shooting them when they go under the screen on him. These are all good things. I don't think it's a home run that he is this good of a shooter just yet. We're going to have to see long term, but this is definitely intriguing stuff. He may be a better shooter than everybody thought he was going to be. But one thing to be intrigued about is that he was a pretty decent free throw shooter in college at around 79%, and that has held up this year as well, where he's at 84% from the line. So, yeah, Sexton may be an actual shooter. Now, you could argue that his shot selection is not the best. I mean, he has been taking some contested threes, and that could be good, could be bad. We're still going to have to see on that. But what is bad is the amount of mid-rangers he attempts. Collin takes about almost 40% of his shots from the mid-range, between 10 feet and long 2-point range. That's just not going to work. Now, I know he's 6'2", so there's a chance that for all of his potential craftiness and strides that he could make as a ball handler and playing in the pick and roll and all that and getting around defenders, he may be forced to take a few more mid-rangers than the average guy just because of that height. And if that's the case, I still think he could shoot less, but he is going to have to improve on these. But, you know, whether it's occasionally just taking a really bad long 2-pointer or pulling up on a shot that isn't necessarily bad, but he just can't make, he's going to have to scale all this back a little bit. But still, the 3-pointer being what it is would suggest he could be able to make shots consistently. Now, to be nice to Collin, just a quick look on NBA.com. In his last 15 games, he's only attempting 2 mid-range jumpers a game, and for the season, he's averaging 5. So that tells you he was taking a lot early on, and he scaled it back quite a bit. So he may already be in the process of taking better shots, but even then, I think that is something that could come back. I mean, that kind of happened to Donovan Mitchell this year, where he kind of doubled down on the problem he had in his rookie season. So I don't think Collin is out of the woods just yet on this, but it is certainly a good sign that it's been better lately. The big criticism you can throw at Collin this year is his playmaking. 3 assists a game, 2 turnovers a game. I remember out of the jump, there was a thing where the Cavs veterans were not happy with Collin because he just didn't know how to get guys the ball, and I think there are different ways to look at this. Number one, yeah, he certainly does not have those playmaking genes, but he has had moments this year where he has had games of 5+ assists, and yeah, that doesn't tell the whole story because the guy's usage rate and his minutes are pretty high, and there's definitely times when he doesn't see a teammate that's open and he chooses to take one of those mid-range jumpers, or he'll dribble the ball back out or pick up his dribble or whatever it may be. And, you know, these are things he's going to have to figure out as well. I mean, it helps that since Kevin Love has come back, his assists have ticked up a little bit, and I think this is something we should talk about, which is what's going on around Collin. I mean, to open up this year, you had veterans who didn't want to be there, with George Hill and J.R. Smith, and Tristan Thompson is bad again. You know, his career has been so up and down. And he didn't have Kevin Love, and you could say that Love is probably the one veteran on this team who, one, is still good, or was, because most of these guys aren't here anymore, but a guy who's still good and knows what he's doing and can make shots and all that, and actually wants to be there. And now that they've gotten a bunch of those guys out, and now this team is Collin and Clarkson and Chetty and Kevin Love and Larry Nance. Granted, Nance has missed time with injury this season, but I like the idea of that team a lot more than one with veterans left over from LeBron's time that didn't have their hearts in on this team. So that's going to help Collin, of course. But even with all that being said, the guy's got to get better as a point guard. He just does. I mean, if he was 4 inches taller, then I think he would be a shooting guard and there wouldn't be much discussion about it. And maybe he could play 2 guard. I mean, he is 6'2", but perhaps you can get creative enough where if they could get some point guard who is maybe a little taller, who can defend a few positions, and you can put Collin on the shortest guy on the opposing team, and then Collin plays off the ball on offense. That is possible. As of right now, they don't really have that guy. The closest thing to it is, I guess, Jordan Clarkson or Chetty Osman if you want to try really hard. So maybe that's something they address in the draft, free agency. Maybe they just say screw it and Collin Sexton should still be our point guard. That might be the right option. But I think the biggest thing is being consistent, because, you know, you look at somebody like Frank Ntilikina, right? The Knicks don't know what they want to do with him, and yeah, Collin is better than Frank, but it would help if Frank knew that he was going to play every day, and if he knew like what position and what his role was going to be. So it's nice that the Cavs are just like, yeah, we know that right now, in terms of actually winning, Collin isn't going to do much, but you just got to see through all that stuff. I know we've gotten all these rookies recently who have come on the scene and been amazing out of the gate. Collin Sexton, you could argue he's been that guy for the last maybe month or so, but for most of the season he was not that guy. But that's cool, as long as there's progression and all that. I guess if we can talk about Collin's defense a little bit, I think he certainly cares about defense. Whether he can actually make an impact there, I don't think we're going to know until he's got a team of guys who can actually defend around him. I mean, yeah, Tristan Thompson in his best days was actually one of the better defenders in the league, but I mean, he didn't care this year. And I mean, is there anybody else in this team who you can rely on as a defender? Maybe David Nwaba, pretty much. So yeah, I'm not going to give Collin too much crap about what his defense is or is not at the age of, I think he was 19 when the year started, and now he's 20, and, you know, everything that's going on with this team. I think my gut reaction with Sexton, if we can fast forward 5 years or so, is there is a chance he's the next Reggie Jackson, a guy who can put up 16, 17, but he's not very efficient, takes too many jumpers, and is not that good of a playmaker. But he could also end up being better than that, and the three-point shooting is probably the thing that would lead me to that. But I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on Sexton, positively or negatively. I think I end up being on the positive side a little bit more because, one, he was so well thought of going into the draft, and also this team is kind of a mess. So yeah, that's where I'm at on Collin Sexton.